Hi, everybody. I'm glad you're back with us tonight. We're on the Astro Imaging channel. And I don't know if you remember, but a few weeks back, Jacques was here. Jacques was going to tell us a whole bunch of interesting things that he knows about how to get an imaging session started and stuff like that. And he had so many interesting things. We had to ask him to come back so that we could have him back again. So Jacques going to be here in a minute or two, and we'll talk about stuff like that. We've just spent a half an hour getting ready for. We've just spent a half an hour getting ready for our show for next week, and we do have some things planned. We don't know which of them are going to be coming off exactly, but we do have them planned, and so you should be proud of us that we're so diligently planning these things for y'all. Next week we're going to have TAIC Shots, Heart of the Galaxy. As you remember, TAIC Shots is something we do up here. We invite everybody to send in their shots by click here to submit. We do this every so often. We have a show about your shots, and we put them all together. Arno puts them all together and attaches some music to it, and we have that show. And then we put it together with a couple of other things, and right now, we're planning on having a program where Eric tells us about how to use some space telescope data, really quick ways to integrate it and produce an image. He's going to be using Photoshop a lot. Eric's one of the all-time great processors around, so we'll have fun watching him do that. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about diverse data. And that's the answer to the question of, like, I took a bunch of lights, and then the next day I took some more, and then we're at a different rotation. Can I use them? And I used one telescope to get this, and I used another telescope to get that. And can I put them together? And so we've got a short tutorial that we hope to bring out, but we don't have the technical means of doing it for sure. We'll check. You'll know what it is. But we will have a show next week, and it'll be a pretty interesting show. And then we've got people coming in for a while. Then we've got all the way up to November, I think, that we've got open finally in November. And then, excuse me, on December 4th, we're going to do a workshop. And you know what? We haven't decided what the workshop's going to be about yet. But a TAIC workshop is where we give you a bunch of data. And I think we're going to be using Terry's data, something from down south, next time around. We haven't decided on that yet. And you get the files and you submit them. And then we have shows based on what you guys did with that. And you come in and you show us a little bit of tips and techniques for doing things. And we encourage you all to put your questions in here. There's a lot of good questions you can ask along the way here. If you have something that comes up you want to know about, tell us over here. And don't forget to subscribe. I don't know if you guys heard me last week, but our subscriptions continue to grow, and we're at 13,500 or something like that. But we need you to hit the subscribe button so that you can be part of us. You can get notices of when the shows are coming and things like that. With all that in mind, I am going to stop sharing and introduce you to Jacques. Jacques, can you take it from here? I think you know what you're doing here.
Thank you so much, Alex. Just want to say again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the Astro Imaging channel. It's really a great privilege for me, and really enjoy it. And I can also just urge everybody, like you do every week, please join in. Offered to do a little presentation. It's not so scary, and it's a lot of fun. So please join in. I'm going to share my screen. So as Alec said earlier, yes, this is part 2 of planning your astro imaging sessions. Really to make the most of your time under the skies. Our time is always at a premium, and one wants to always make best use of the time we have to capture the best data possible to generate the most beautiful pictures that we can do. So just there we go. So just a quick recap. In part 1, we looked at target selection. Where do you find targets? Doing some research on your targets, framing and game plan around targets. We then delved a bit into the gear setup, which was a lot of fun. How do you prep your gear, getting everything ready for your big imaging sessions that lie ahead. So in part 2, tonight we're going to dive right into the image acquisition process. We're going to unpack the whole process of imaging a bit. We're going to look a bit into how we optimize your sequencing. How do we schedule your exposures? There's a little surprise on using some Python, how I use it in my Astro imaging and planning. And we'll also touch a bit on optimization and monitoring. Then also very important, we'll touch a bit on post-processing. Very important, how do you manage all this wonderful data that you collect, and a little bit on data reduction using PixInsight, a wonderful tool of weighted batch pre-processing, some tips and tricks around that process. And then the age-old question of what makes a great image, and some considerations there that you have to keep in mind. So let's get started. Image acquisition. So let's capture all those nice photons. So this is again a very busy slide, and we're gonna work through this for a moment because I think it's so critical. Practicing this process and getting it all planned out so you know exactly what you have to do when you're imaging in your process. So obviously, first off is, if you're like me, just the average guy that sets up every night and tears down every night or every session, you have to first physically set up your gear. So the order is very important that you set up. So firstly, you want to set up your mount, you want to put your counterweights on, then you want to put your OTA on with your camera and all the attached bits, and then you want to hook up your power electronics. It's very important, as I said, the way you set up, because if you don't want to load your mount with the OTA without the counterweights attached, and obviously connecting power before everything is there, and just following this simple little order of how you do things makes life a lot easier. Just a quick reference to an earlier slide in part 1 was just this, making things a little bit easier. So keep these in mind. So mark your balance positions when your gear and stuff on your setup doesn't change that much night to night or session to session. Mark your dovetail position, where's close balance of your deck axis. The same with your counterweights for your RA balance. Mark those. It just makes your setup so much easier and so much quicker. The same with just getting your setup to be repeatable. Mark your positions of your tripod legs. Make sure your rig is set up to be level as possible. Mark close focus position. It just makes it so much quicker to set up and tear down very quickly. So let's get back. Then, before we can start imaging, so that's really a pre-imaging little steps that you can take, is after we've set up our kit outside, we can then power on. We can then connect everything, get all this software hooked up that you want to use, your imaging software, your guiding software, your focusing software. Make sure all of them are connected and that everything is up and running. Then you want to do a quick pointing model something like in the back here with a software BISC, Mighty, that takes a little bit of time, 5 to 10 minutes to do a quick pointing and recalibration run maybe. Even a Celestron, what do they call it, the old freestar alignment, that's actually a little pointing model, and that just makes sure that your scope knows where it is in the night, and can, when you slew to your first target, it can get you close there, and you can then use something like plate solving from then. But it's nice to just get that out of the way. Then obviously you have to polar align. We talked about a few methods in the first show, so you can go and recap there. If need be, do a quick guide calibration if you are guiding, just to make sure that everything is nice and set up there as well. Initial focus in this time, it's also good just to make sure that everything is in focus and everything is not just big blobs on the screen, and you are so far from focus that you don't know where you are, and it will be difficult when you start to point to things. So that's good. And then very important, if you have a cool camera, let it cool down. Most of these cameras now have a little routine, so it ramps down nice and quickly, so you don't shock the sensor when you cool it down too fast. So that's always a good idea to do. And then you want both of these in place before it actually becomes astronomical night or dusk, because you don't want to miss a second of that valuable time. So during the physical imaging session, there's a few things that you have to keep in mind. How do you point to your targets with plate solving? What do you do there? What focusing regime are you going to follow? Are you going to focus by filter or by temperature drops? Or there's a lot of things that you can do, but you have to plan for it in this at this stage already. Guiding, if you are guiding, you're going to manage that the whole imaging session. Actual capturing of the subframes, so you want to know how long and at what burning modes and at what gain and offset if you have a CMOS. So you have to keep that in mind. Meridian flip, how you're gonna if you have an equatorial mount, how you're gonna handle the meridian flip. Is your software gonna do it for you? Must you do it physically? Keep that in mind. And then just how are you gonna monitor everything? And also dew control. Dew control is very important if you live in very humid areas, so keep that in mind. And then will you need calibration frames? Make sure you have everything ready to do them as well if you need them, especially the flats. You usually want to take your flats as close to your actual capture of your subframes. And then after a great night of imaging, and you captured so much data that you don't know how you're gonna work with everything, a little teardown routine here is you'll obviously want to park your mount in a safe position. Then again, like we cool down the camera, we also want to warm up our camera slowly to again not shock the sensor and cause any damage. So keep that in mind and plan to do that little warm-up run as well. Then we want to disconnect everything, put power off, and then physically take the rig apart and put it in your storage location. And then the teardown process is exactly the reverse of the setup order. So that's very nice. So obviously you'll first disconnect all your electronics and everything, then take off the OTA, then the counterweights, and finally you can disassemble your mount. Also, again, very important, you don't want to take the counterweights off before the OTA or something to create a very unbalanced thing and your scope comes crashing down into the pier or anything. So keep that in mind. So although this is a lot to take into consideration, It's a good plan to practice this a bit. Some people like to make little checklists of these steps. I urge you to do something like that as well. Make sure you don't miss anything. And you'll see, the more you practice, the easier it gets. Like Gary Player also said. So just keep practicing it, and you'll definitely refine your little process to do all of this as quickly as you possibly can. So just like we said, you don't have to wait for total darkness to do all of this. You can do your physical setup and all of this pre-alignment stuff you can do already before it still in twilight. That gives you a bit of a head start so you don't lose any imaging time. And then another, I just want to hide this little thing here. And then the next question is, how much of this can we actually automate? You know, the robots are taking and the machines are taking our lives over. So how much of this can actually be automated? And we'll touch back to this question a bit later. So let's next up talk a bit about sequence optimization. So there's a few things that we have to consider. And if you think about it very clearly, it's always amazing to think that what we are actually able to achieve with the challenges that we have is that we are actually shooting through an entire ocean of air above us. And a very important thing to keep in mind is air mass. And air mass, obviously, the more air we have to shoot through, the more turbulences we are going to get. You can see a little insert here of how air mass can affect something like seeing. So seeing is not just affected by air mass, but obviously when you shoot through twice as much air mass than straight to the zenith, you will see the effects. There's no two things about that. So just for interest here, you can see that at zenith, you are shooting through only one air mass. But as your target gets lower and lower, you are shooting through more air masses, and that can really affect your images. So at about this is about let's say 42 degrees, something of 42 degrees altitude, you're already shooting through 1.5 air masses. And then if your target gets down to 30 degrees above the horizon, you are shooting through double the air mass, 2 air masses. So you have to take that into consideration and schedule your captures, your image captures, considering this. Very important to keep in mind is the way light refracts or disperses or scatters through this air. And we all did the little prisms in probably high school, and we know this. But you'll see that a red light diffracts the least, and your bluer light reflects more due to the wavelengths. We see that every sunset, when the sun is very low in the sky, the only light that's actually able to get through this huge amount of air mass is the red light, and that's why sunsets are red. So how can, with this knowledge, how can we optimize our sequencing and our image captures, taking all of this into consideration? So what I always try to do, and I know a lot of people try to do that, is I always want to take I can almost say my most important sequences as high as possible in the sky. So obviously my luminance, if you are doing filtered images through the different colored filters, you always want to try and do your luminance in as high in the sky as possible. So you can see here, I created this little plots here that show how my target, in this case I did Barnard 228, and this was on this night how the target climbed through the sky. And so I wanted to shoot my, like, you know, or my luminance as high as in the sky around this time, around transit time. But as my target was climbing, I shot some red frames because the light refracts the least. So my red filtered images affect the least low in the sky. And then obviously, as it climbs, I'll move to green and blue. And then coming down again after crossing the meridian, the sequence in backwards order here, from the luminance that was captured highest in the sky, then blue, green, and red. So if possible, use, we are fighting science here, so use the science. It really makes a big difference. I'm going to show you a quick example. Quite interesting how this pans out. So very important to keep this kind of, and when possible. It's not always possible to shoot like this. You know, you might have obstructions to one end, or your target is just very low in the sky that you're trying to shoot. But if possible, make use of this kind of thing. Schedule your captures optimally to combat this effects a bit. So just on that, I just want to show you guys. I'm gonna be Adam Block for 5 minutes. I just pulled in a few of my calibrated light frames, and that was actually a narrowband data set that I did of the Pro Nebula a few months ago. And this is the oxygen 3 data set. So obviously your oxygen filter is a blue-green filter. So you'll see that even your narrowband images can be affected by AMS. So I pulled these in and I sorted them just by acquisition date. And if we open the graphs here in subframe selector, what I'm showing you guys here is, firstly, you can just see how I shot the images. So I shot them after the meridian, so the target was falling in the sky. So you can see here, I shot one. I'm showing in the blue line is the altitude. So you can see here, I shot a sequence. Then the next night, I started here just before the meridian. I went up, across the meridian, down again, following it down. Next night, a next set. And you see that my target was actually quite high. You see 77 degrees to, what is this, 65 degrees. But just look in the dotted line. I'm showing PSF signal weight, and you can see how the signal weighting, that image calibration and image weighting, that how it follows the altitude and a function of the AMS, just how it follows. So it was quite interesting for me to see this clearly in even a narrowband set. So I believe there's a lot of value to that kind of sequencing. Just some other optimizations that you can also try. I don't know if there's a other word for this kind of sequencing, but I'm calling it the rolling dithered sequencing. So what people do is they'll take like a red frame, green frame, blue frame, luminance, then dither, then go back and do the sequence again. So they acquire the data, you know, looping through all their filters in one. So this is quite fashionable if you are doing very short exposures, and it's also quite effective because of the dithering overhead that you'll normally pay. So as you can see in this example, you only dither every 8th frame physically, but every 2nd frame of your individual filtered frames are actually dithered. So quite unique, and quite useful if you do the shorter exposures, and trying to get over that dithering overhead cost. If you are doing just sequences of one filter sets. Also a nice property of this method is that you have uniform data collection. So what that means is you start at the beginning of the night, and halfway through clouds roll in, and you have to stop imaging. So at least you have a set of data containing all of your filters up to then, while maybe if you shot your filters one by one, you'll only have, let's say, the red and the green channels, and then you have half an image. You don't have the uniform data. At least you have all your filters, and you can still process the image. So that is nice. But just remember that if you do kind of this, you must consider that there's probably a focus offset between the different filters. Although it says on the packaging that they are parfocal, it's not usually the case, and there will be always the tiniest of filter offset between these filters. So you'll probably have to build in some kind of filter offset adjustments as you move from filter to filter doing these methods. Unfortunately, I don't have too many tips for the one-shot color or DSLR images out there. I'm a mono shooter, so all I can probably say is try to shoot at the highest altitude possible, and maybe look into one of those light pollution filters for your DSLR or your one-shot color camera. People are producing wonderful images with that kind of workflows. So if you are a one-shot color shooter, look into those. And then when the moon is in the sky, doesn't mean you have to stop imaging. You can still image. You can still image narrowband quite effectively during even a full moon. So just a point on moon avoidance is when you have narrowband filters and you want to do some LRGB normal color work, is shoot your LRGB when the moon is down, or at a low phase, say less than 50% moon, while you shoot your narrowband with moon up, or when it's at a high phase. So you don't have to stop imaging when the moon is up and bright in the sky. You can still collect some very, very decent images, even with those constraints. Then I want to jump into a little live demo. I've been playing a bit with Python over the last couple of months. We also use it as part of my work, so it's amazing what you can do with that. And just want to show you guys maybe a few things. We're not going to spend too much time. This is probably 3 shows on its own of the full power, but I want to show you just a few things that you can actually do with that. So just how it works is you'll always have a base of your Python interpreter language and an interface like Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook, I'll show you an example now, is where you can run blocks of codes consecutively, and generate graphs and everything. On top of the interpreter and this interface, you'll hear stuff like pandas and matplotlib. Pandas is storing your data in data frames, or like Excel spreadsheets on steroids. That's just to host your data. So think of pandas like that, and matplotlib. So the plot gives it away. That's a plotting library to plot whatever you want there. And then there's even there's so much libraries that you can pull into Python to work, that uses the interpreted language of Python language. And one of them is AstroPy, extremely powerful, with a lot of tools and very useful functions that you can use. So always think of Python as your calculator, and libraries, all the functions and all the buttons that you can push to do interesting things with that. So I just quickly want to open up here. So this just to, I'm gonna be quite quick, and the code police must just not arrest me. It's probably not the cleanest code, but you know, it's just my little playing place, you know, and something like a Jupyter notebook makes that very easy. So this is Jupyter notebook, and you can see here we import all our libraries there as AstroPy and AstroPlan. And all of this, this is typically our other functions. Yeah, I just wrote my own little decimal to degrees conversion functions here. That's typically how these functions look. So yeah, we get into the nice stuff. So yeah, I set up where I am in the world. I pick a time, and it will then go and calculate everything for us, just where we are, and the parameters.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure, Eric.
So what is the purpose of this program, this Python code?
For me, you'll just see now, I wrote a little scheduler just to stuff that we discussed just now, to calculate some of them.
So this is part of your automation?
Yeah, it's just when I plan a target, I like to just pull it in here, and I can do a few calcs and just make a few nice plots and stuff like that.
Is this something you're going to post somewhere, or is it just for your own private use?
Yeah, it's currently, as I say, the code police will arrest me. It's probably not the cleanest of codes, but obviously anybody can reach out if they want have some more questions around that, and I'll be more than happy to share something like this.
So this is a scheduler saying what you're going to do for that particular night.
Yes. We are getting there now.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, 100%. So you see, you can import the image. So you see, here's the dark wolf and the 4 panels that I wanted to shoot over it. And here you see now we are moving into the into the plots. So these are everything that you have to set up, and a few calculations here, and you see a few things, and this spits out one of those plots that I showed you. So it shows at astronomical dusk where the target is and how it moves through the skies, what's the transit time of the target, and so on. So it's in, and I even imported my own little custom horizon here. So as I say, very, very powerful and very useful to visualize stuff like this. Also, building your little altitude plot here of just how it follows through the sky. You'll see we even show the moon here, and the sun altitude and the target's altitude around midnight. Midnight is 0 years, so So it's just so useful to have all of this information at hand when you're trying to schedule your imaging night. And then here's just a lot of here we actually bring in our so I just have an output of my coordinates of my 4 panels. In this case, you can see them here with the RA and DEC coordinates. And I just build the targets into the AstroPy convention here and what they need here. And here's the juicy bits where I am doing a few calculations here and actually assigning a score to them based on what filter, based on altitude, based on a lot of things. I assign a little filters with some limits that say, for instance, I don't want to shoot red lower than 30 or green. Only shoot it when it's at least 60 degrees above the horizon. Stuff like that. That goes in here. As you can see, it's quite a bit of code here. But that actually then spits out something like this. So in your imaging night, you see just at astronomical dusk, I want to start with a little green frame there. Then I want to do a few blue ones because they are high enough in the sky. Shoot some luminosity filters. Interesting, I just show it here. So our transit time is right here. So I just flip my max score, my scores over. Just to show, here's the meridian flip. So you can see I shoot my luminance around the meridian here, and then once we go down again, follow the target down, a little blue frame there, shoot a few greens, and then reds to round the night out. So very useful. You see, obviously these nice new scheduling softwares do this all for you, you know, with a click of a button. But it's nice to build it yourself, to know how it works and understand how, and actually to get it to do what you want it to do. So yeah, a bit of a tinkerer there with this kind of things, but
Jacques,
very useful. Yes,
Jacques,
Alex.
on any given night. Okay, first up, what you just showed us, was that one target? One night, one target?
Yes. So,
okay. On any given night, you've already got the program written. How long does it take you to tell it, this is what I want to take a picture of? Tell me all the other stuff.
So easy. You have this program, so you change your date and your time here, and you bring in your new. This, as I said, was a 4-tile mosaic. So where did I bring them in? I bring them in here. So you just bring in this 4-line CSV file, and it runs it for you, and it spits out a new schedule for you. It's literally
Jacques,
like minutes. Yes.
Jacques, that translates to 3 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour?
5 minutes at the most, and getting everything ready as well.
So if I've decided that tonight I'm going to shoot the rosette, I can call up my spreadsheet or call up my little program here and change 6 or 8 parameters within, and in 5 minutes I've got all those charts and graphs.
Exactly.
And does that program my acquisition software, my SGP or Nina or Voyager or anything?
Whichever you use to just get your target coordinates. That's all you have to feed this thing. It's just,
you still have to type those into the
yes,
into the acquisition program.
So typically you can get something in a little spreadsheet from something like Telescopius or SGP or any of these. You can just put in those coordinates, and it runs.
Okay, well, my other question was going to be, what does this give me that Telescopius isn't giving me?
Maybe just what I built in it for me personally was just to build a little scheduler to see at what times during the night must I shoot what kind of filters and things. So I scheduled that out a bit. But you can always just eyeball that information from something like Telescopius. It also has the altitude plots. It has all of that. But like the little geek in me just wanted to do something like this.
Okay.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Thanks. And something else that you can then do, you see here, I created these loops here, and this whole thing here, all of this is actually the guts of Voyager sequence file. So I even write my sequences in Python, and I can then just import those sequences into my drag script. So I even write out my little sequences in loop form, looping through my targets. You see there my targets here, target name, named correctly and everything, and I can just pull it into my drag script there.
Well, before we leave that first part of your presentation, first part of this part of the presentation, Matthew wanted to know that your schedule showed a dither after the set. Would you still not want to dither after every image photo filter? What?
So we can go back to that one quickly. So like this, obviously when you are doing something like this, you have to dither within these, as you're taking this whole sequence of these images, you'll dither in there. But if you're just doing 2 exposures here, 2 exposures here, 2 exposures, and dither, then you don't have to dither in between here. So this is the rolling dithered one.
Okay, that's because you're using rolling dithered in this example, but in the example that is in your computer program, you're not using roller dithered. You're taking several.
Yes.
You're taking all your reds for, well, a bunch of your reds, a bunch of your greens.
In that time zone or that time slot, yes.
And you could still dither every second shot if you wanted to.
Exactly, yeah.
But
yes.
or
I'll
you
set up my
dither every shot.
This is typically this kind of sequencing, the Hermes consideration sequencing, where you want to follow this methodology 100%.
Okay, I think, let me see, is that the questions, Eric? We got out there?
Yeah, I think you got it.
We got them.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Alex.
Go ahead, Jack.
So after that bit, this leads us into the automation and monitoring part. You remember that was one of the questions when we unpacked the whole imaging night, is how much of this can we actually automate? So you saw what I did with Python and things. So from planning, you can use that as an input here. So I personally use Voyager for my automation, and just like we saw here, you saw the ugly code of that, but Voyager uses these sequence configurations where you can set up everything, and it will do everything for you. You can set up your dithering there, your guiding parameters, your pointing. You can set everything in your into your sequence definition, and it will take care of everything for you. Even how I use and then building from the sequences into the DAG script, and there was already a few people on the Astro imaging channel that discussed the Voyager sequencing and DAG scripting. I urge you to go and watch those. I watched them probably 1 million times. They were very useful. But you just breaking a typical DAG script of mine that I run every evening. You'll see I have in red here, I actually have a before Astro dark block. And this is actually before it even is astronomical dusk. I connect my setup. I cool down my sensor like we talked about. I do a quick slew and calibrate my guider here. I do a quick, like I say, initial focus here. And then when everything ran through here, it will just sit and wait. for me until it's astronomical dusk, and then it will start running all my sequences for me. So typically, I then have these blocks that I just mark sequence 1 or slot 1, slot 2, and I will just sequence them then by using putting one of these sequences in each one, and that's how my night will run through, marching just on itself, pointing and doing the focusing and guiding for me, managing the meridian flips for me, everything. Really nice. Voyager, there's a lot of options like Voyager. It's not just Voyager. You have Sequence Generator Pro that Alex just referred to. You have Nina, and there's others as well. But I urge everybody, once your setup is nice and mature, consider getting some kind of automation program for your setup. It just makes life so much easier. So with all this in mind, and now that our machine is took over most of our functions, you don't have to babysit this thing anymore. It's just how do we monitor our night? And again, Voyager has some amazing functionality. You'll see actually here that I have sent Telegram messages here. You can send emails at key stages, just to keep you updated where you are in your sequencing. Did it encounter a problem? You can flag an error like that. What I like to do is I connect to my setup with my iPad over Wi-Fi. I can see my whole screen with Voyager here. As my subframes is coming in, I can evaluate them. I don't know about you guys, but I sit in front of the computer every day during night. I don't want to just sit in front of my computer watching my my imaging happening as well. So it's very nice when you just have it on your little tablet. You can watch a movie or have dinner and do whatever, and just keep an eye on it. While even Voyager can send you, like I said, email messages, Telegram messages, and this is actually a a photo of my phone screen of Telegram messages coming through from my Voyager bot that says slot 7 can start, slot 7 finished. So it's moving to sequence 8. Sequence 8 can start. So I just keep an eye out it and just listen for the Telegram messages falling, and I know my thing is running optimally on its own, all managed, and collecting some great data. So I think we caught most of the questions, Alex and Eric, but if there's nothing else, we can move over to the post-processing bit now. That's good. So let's just discuss maybe a little bit about data flow and how my system works. I'm sure everybody's is a bit different or so, but this is I think a good starting point, and shows a few interesting and a few valuable things that you have to take into consideration. So how my data flows is from my telescope and my little acquisition little computer, my Intel NUC. I send everything automatically to a cloud service. I call it Astro Data Stream. As it is acquiring the images, it sends it to the cloud service, where I then go and intercept them. I still do this manual because I just want to sort out my data a bit and stuff. So I do this step manually, let's say the next day, or even while I'm imaging, I'll do that. and then I'll copy them to my main PC or my Astro processing machine. What I have an actual drive dedicated for my images in my computer. I mapped it as an A drive, call it Astro drive, and everything lives here, dedicated, isolated from all the other stuff on the computer, just allocated to that. I urge you to do the same there. It's nice to have everything in one place. And how I like to organize my folder structures, I organize by year, let's say 2021, 2022. And then in each of those, I'll have the targets that I shot there. And then we'll circle back to this. What I do is I create within each targets folder, I create session folders. Now, for everybody, a session definition maybe means something a bit different, but for me, it's really, I can string a few nights maybe together and still call it one session. It's usually when I touch something on the scope, I took the camera off, or I rotated it a lot, or something that I then say, listen, I probably have to call it a new session now, because and critically, that's really because I knew I need new calibration files. So, and then in each session here, I'll then have my imaging files, my fit files, and each session will have its dedicated calibration files as well. Just an important thing as well is make a point of backupping your images regularly. And again, everybody does it a bit differently. You can copy it on a NAS or an external hard drive or whatever you want to use, but make a point to do that regularly. And now my data stream now is set up is I can actually have 4 copies of the data in 4 places at any given time. Usually when I'm done with a target and stuff, and after a few months, and I'm sure I at least backed it up safely, I'll start to delete it from the imaging acquisition computer and maybe the cloud to save a bit of space there. But try to have your data in a few locations. That's also a good tip. Then just on your file structure for your captures, it's good to keep a track on that as well. Usually our files will look horribly long like this, but there's some critical information in those files, so bear with the long ugly names. This is just the Voyager file scheme. And for your reference, target name is there, what kind of exposure it is, your binning, length, cooling. There's a lot of information in the file name here, and be assured sometimes you want to refer back to the name. So try to capture as much information in that file name, so that you can keep track of your data quite easily as well. Now we'll move a bit into the data reduction, or the calibration and the stacking and so on. How do you reduce all of your subframes into your master light frames? And really indispensable tool these days are PixInsight weighted batch pre-processing. There's just been an update last week on it. It's seeing an amazing growth and it's very powerful. It's if I can remember when I started, how tedious it was to calibrate frames and stack frames and keeping track of everything, doing it manually. This thing is absolutely third world wonder, really. It's fantastic. So what I just want to show you a bit of tonight is that a key update to the weighted batch processing was the ability to use keyword groupings that you can actually calibrate and stack. I call it independently, but using these groupings of files, you can calibrate and stack the data independently from each other. Let's say you have a lot of sessions with different calibration frames, and then at the end of the process, stack everything together. This really enables the use or it made it so easy to do it by just using these little blocks with the keywords. So it uses a hierarchy of control. Obviously, when you pull something into PixInsight or weighted batch processing in this example, it reads all the fits keyword information. That happens without you even knowing it. That's how it distinguishes a light from a dark or a bias or a flat. That already happens here. Your filter information is usually in there as well. Then now in this hierarchy, you can also have some of these keywords in your file name now. We'll see how we use that. And then also very powerful, the next level of hierarchy is then folder name. So you can use that in your groupings to group and calibrate and stack, like I say, almost independently. So I'm just going to open PixInsight again quickly. I have a little pre-baked one here. Just maybe give it a second to load everything. And yes, the data structure. So while it's thinking in the background there, you see, just in real life, this is my folder structure here. I have my Astro drive, Astro imaging 2022, and then my Carina project. And here's my session 1. And you'll see here I have all the frames I took there, and its associated flats that I need, my calibration frames. Session 2, the same. You see now they are all mixed up here, and again I have the flats that I need there, and session 3 as well. You see they are also there. Now just note, just going back to the presentation quickly. Sorry guys, so the data set I'm going to show you is my Carina project. So that again was a mosaic of 4 panes or tiles here. And what I just did was I just made sure that I have it in my file names. You see there, pane _1. You see here. And if we go pane _3, for instance. So remember now we talked about the hierarchy of control. So we can use this kind of thing now as a grouping keyword because it's in the file name. So what I just did is I just brought in all of those directories. I just wanted to save some time tonight. So here you see we have all of those lights that I brought in. I just brought in all of that information one shot. You'll see all the lights, and so now let's just see here without using keywords now. So remember, currently it only sees the fit information that's in the fit headers. So we know it can distinguish at least the flats from the lights and the darks and so on. File types, it recognizes that. Filters, so you can see here. So I have both red, green, and blue, and then the narrowband filters in this data set. So what you'll see is that currently,
Jacques,
yes,
it's a little difficult for the viewers to to actually read the text.
Is it a bit small?
Yeah, I think it's a bit small, and we stream out at 720. We've had a lot of discussions about that.
Yeah.
Is there some way you could, kind of give us the elevator pitch on this?
Yes. I'm
Rather
just going
than
to
point to things that I think it's going to be difficult for
Yes,
people
the presentation slide has that. I just want to show it literally in real life here. So let's just quickly do it. So you see we have all our frames here. So let's say, and we set up the keywords, remember our folder names, our session keyword name, and our pane keyword name that was in our file names. So now, by just clicking then here, where we want to use the keyword, do we want to use it on the pre-process or the post-process? We say that we want to use the session keyword on the pre-process, so that's the calibration process. And there you can see that it actually now knows that we actually have two different flats or session of flats for the hydrogen alpha, for example. But still, if you look at the pre or the post-processing, you see that we still have all of them it's just recognizing the filters now, so they are still all mixed up here, or so it won't work. But that's what we can use that file keyword then, and we can just turn that one on. Let's just see, like this, and magically you'll see there that it recognized then that pane keyword now, and that we now have, let's say, a red filtered image for each of the panes. You see 3, 4, 2, and 1. So for each one, broken down correctly, and you can just execute that very, very easily. So fantastic tool. Let's just go to the presentation. So here is for reference just the post and or the pre and the post processing, just to show you guys where they come into play with this this data set. If your files are structured like that, very powerful. Urge everybody to practice this a bit. Structure your files like this just makes life so much easier. Cool. Thank you very much for that. Then just to end off, just want to touch a bit on the age-old question of really what makes a great image. And if, let's say, you want to see some great images of the Orion Nebula, and you type in M42 into Astro, you get more than 19,000 records. And just to say, just a general comment on the Astro images, all of them are great images. You know, somebody put in the time and the effort to capture that thing. They want to share that. They are all great images. But what takes the imaging then to the next level from a great image? So I really think that you know, the image must be technically sound. What I mean with that is you know, the stars must be round, so your tracking must be good. The colors must look okay. You know, must be nice and sharp in focus, stuff like that. Because unfortunately, with like everything in life, it's the GIGO effect, garbage in, garbage out. So your data must be technically sound. Then you also need enough data. Unfortunately, the stuff that we capture is extremely faint. You need the data to process. It makes processing easier. You can reveal so much more by just having the data while you process. So you need the data. You really do need, and you'll see some of the wonderful, excellent images on Astrobin. 20, 30, 40, 50 hours integration. It's insane. But you really need that to show the object in his best form. Then you need good processing, balancing the colors out, not over sharpening the objects, stuff like that. Good processing is necessary. Then remember, the image tells a story. And you want to tell an interesting story. So think about the storytelling potential of what you're trying to show. That elevates images. And then there's also some artistic considerations. We'll touch on those just now as well. So just a few highlights from taking this discussion forward. We probably all know this image by Rogelio, M44. The story that this image tells is just fantastic. The wide view of just how big this complex of Orion really is. And even this by Toshiya, that takes it even further, and the storytelling in this image is also so good with Mount Fuji here. Fantastic story that this image tells. Or then you can go back and zoom in like Christoph Littblau did here, really telling the story of the birthplace of stars, trapezium, and really zooming in here, focusing more on the technical side, of getting this right, nice small stars and controlling the dynamic range, really tough. So this is typically all the different stories that you can tell with a single object like Orion, and that you always have to consider in your imaging. Artistic considerations. I won't go through everything of this, but me personally, coming from a more terrestrial, before astro imaging, more terrestrial photography, these are really principles that we can take forward into our astro imaging as well. So first off, you have principles of design, and obviously a lot of this applies to us. Contrast is key in our images. The bright objects against a dark sky. How you pull objects out with, let's say, emphasis, and think about something like movement. The nice flowing gas clouds. How can you use that in your storytelling of your image? Then color theory is very important. I'm not going to cover everything in here, but if you think about colors, or always think about, let's say, complementary colors, or colors that's not really that complementary. Just take for instance, in our case, why is blue and yellow stars always something that we all chase in our images? It is because it's complementary colors. They are on opposite sides of the color wheel, so they are complementary, and that's why it works. And that's why when you maybe have something like magenta stars, it doesn't really work, because it's not complementary to each other. So keep stuff like that in mind as well. And then composition, we touched a few times on composition, but here's a nice little picture to give you a few ideas. We all know rule of thirds, but there are a lot more. Golden spiral is there that plays off the rule of thirds, really. Something like a radial, that's why some of our stuff works as well, placing the object in the center of the frame, if that's the focus, radial or circular, compound curves. Think of how dust and stuff moves again, then playing off principles of design movement again, or diagonal, how your eye leads through the image. Very important considerations. So If I can recommend everybody researching these a bit, or use this presentation and this screenshot, maybe take a screenshot, and when you're planning your images and processing, keep these in mind to take your images to the next level. Then I'm going to end off with just some final thoughts of some things that you have to take into consideration while you're planning your images. I call these the 3 greatest challenges in astro imaging. These underline all of our challenges really with our data sets, and that's really signal, dynamic range, and noise. And you can also see the gears here. They are not independent of each other. You know, the signal gear turns both the noise and the dynamic range gears. You know, so always keep these in mind because they are really the greatest challenges for us. So for signal, what can you do to capture better signal, to battle this challenge a bit? Like we said, more data, better data. Maybe travel to the dark sky and capture your luminance data from the dark sky. You can still maybe capture your color data from your backyard, but where your detail lies is in your luminance. So maybe travel to that dark sky and capture the data from there to get better data, get more detail in your images. Image calibration, we went into the image calibration a bit tonight. There's such wonderful tools now. I urge you to go maybe look at somebody like Adam Block's videos. Amazing what we can do with calibration now, really then bring the real signal in your images to the front, and not just the background noise and the weak signal, really maximizing the valuable signal in your images. Background modeling, we've been doing this for a while now, using something like DBE or ABE, subtracting those gradients out of the images, lifting the real signal out of the images, very important. And then I put this last because I don't want to say now you need to go and buy a new camera, but let's be upfront that the new cameras are fantastic. The new CMOS cameras are fantastic. Their QE, quantum efficiencies are ever improving and just getting better and better as new models are being released. So that's also a consideration maybe for down the line. But first get the first few in place before spending money. Dynamic range, again, here's a theme here, is getting more better data, revealing that faint stuff underneath the more bright stuff. It's really challenging. We work with great dynamic ranges, between let's say your bright stars and this very faint stuff. So you need the data to separate the two. You can consider something like HDR imaging. I think that's becoming quite popular now. Is people imaging with longer exposures to reveal the object itself, and then afterwards just take data sets, let's say short exposures, just for the stars, just for stars colors, and so you manage their signal, that they don't overpower your object, and you can later then combine them. We have tools like the next one, star removal now. That's really been, I must say, for me personally, and I think absolutely a fantastic new process introduction by separating your stuff with your bright stuff the stars from your dim stuff, you can now process them separately, and at the end combine them. You don't have to, you can be a bit more aggressive stretching your objects. You don't have to worry about the stars bloating and stuff. That makes the processing just so much easier. And then better stretching, something like GHS, generalized hyperbolic stretching, but there's other ones as well. How do we convert that raw signal into a picture with good dynamic range? There's something like GHS just gives you that much control over the transformation of the data. That's a great tool to master, and will definitely take your images forward. And then again, camera technology. At the end of this, new cameras have higher full depths and higher dynamic ranges and that's also ever increasing. So we'll probably see some more in the future. That's even better. And the final one, the dreaded noise. And again, what do you need? You need more data. Remember, signal to noise ratio is all dependent on the amount of data that you capture. And then it's been also in the last couple of years some fantastic noise reduction methodologies that came out, something like wavelets denoising and noise exterminator or the like. And then again, cameras and camera technology is getting better. Less cameras with less read noise and stuff will and can help you, but the other ones must also be in place. So with that, I thank you so much for taking up 2 shows. It was an absolute pleasure and an absolute privilege for me. And I hope that everybody could learn at least a little something from the 2 sessions. It's difficult to do something like that because all our setups and all our processes is so different. But I hope everybody could at least learn something. And if there's any further more questions, please shout out. You can find me on Cloudy Nights or Astrobin. I don't have a funny handle. I'm just Jacques Deacon, like my mother gave me my name. And you can even feel free to email me.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Jacques. You did a very thorough job of telling people what they need to know about managing their imaging sessions and getting their data and how to use it and what makes a better program for that. We have an ongoing discussion over on YouTube that we're just going to leave as an ongoing discussion because it's about dithering, and I'm sure there's lots to say, but it is getting a little late. So we're going to sign off for tonight. Next week, we will have your images, all of everybody's images coming up, and we will have you, Arno will put together a video for us, and Eric will be here talking about how to get data off the Webb telescope and process it very easily. And hopefully I'll be here telling you about how to use data from disparate imaging rigs and just different nights and things like that. So we want to thank you, Jacques, and Jacques a very good example. If you've got something to say, please come on and help say it. Make your presentation on the Astro Imaging channel, okay? Anything else we need from the crew? Then I am going to turn it back over to Terry, who's been streaming for us tonight. Terry, take us out.